All right, this is a wrestling doctor for Pro Wrestling Extra. I'm sitting here with Dagon Briggs. Everybody knows his background. If you don't, go to YouTube and look this guy up. You're going to see something unbelievable. You're going to see so many different characters that he's done. It is just, the guy's great. Dagon, thank you for sitting down with me.
I appreciate that a lot.
Now, I'm not going to go through his history. You guys check that out. It's worth looking for. It's not hard to find. YouTube is very simple to use. But really, I wanted to talk to you and kind of explore your wrestling mind. I've had a lot of interviews where I've talked to guys about where you started and all that stuff, but I don't want to do that with you because I respect what you think about the business. You know, we haven't really sat down and talked about it. I've heard some things, and I want to ask you some things. One of the things that I brought up with you was a lot of old timers like me talking about how great it was back in the 80s and how much better it was than it is today. Now, do you have a different opinion to that, or do you think that's as it was?
It's like I broke in, you know, like in the late 90s, and I was broken, I think, by guys that probably were broken in the 80s. And like the only difference, I don't really know if there is much of a difference, you know, like as far as the breaking in, because I think back, for me, I think about guys like Luthez, Don Curtis, and like guys like that were like, you know, I shook Luthez's hand before, and this dude's hand like could wrap around my hand. He had like stone hands, and I've heard stories from Don Curtis about him like snapping his ankle, snapping his wrist, just in like matches where he was breaking him into the business. And like they don't do stuff like that, so like it's just different because there's training nowadays where people will be a little stiffer with their training as opposed to some guys will be a lot lighter on the training as far as bumping and stuff. So like I really think it's who you deal with more so than anything, because there's legit guys that'll break you in right, and then there's guys that really don't know about it, and that you get a second-hand version of it.
Right. You know, I always talk about that. Back in the olden days, we were lucky enough, and this is what I really think was better in the past, was we were able to be in territories. So you would be on a circuit, and you would pretty much be with the same wrestlers on the circuit.
Or not territory stuff.
A territory area. Yeah. So you actually developed a bond. You became like a team traveling, and it was great. I mean, you stayed in the same hotel. It was great. It was a bunch of guys having as much fun as you could. And it was fun. But one thing that was even more important back in the 80s to me than what is today is when you got into wrestling, they just didn't bring anybody in wrestling. You didn't come in there and there's a school and you come in there and pay money and they take you.
Oh yeah, that was totally
you
different
were
world.
chosen. Yeah, you were chosen to get to learn about wrestling. So it meant something. They didn't just bring Yahoo off the street.
Oh yeah.
Unless you were 7 foot tall and it's like today.
Exactly.
So when you came in, they put you through really training because you were learning something not everybody knew. And they needed you to be a good wrestler because they couldn't afford to waste their time on just a Yahoo that gets in there and can't wrestle.
And yeah, there was that also that like they wanted you to be, you know, 6'3" and 265 pounds. They, you know, a lot of those guys, if you look back at them, they were all like the same, just like these big meat and potato dudes, you know what I mean? And like it was a very like wrestling goes through like genres almost through times, you know what I mean? Like in the 70s, the guys got a little bit down. In the 80s, they kind of plumped back up, and then like the 90s is really what kind of opened up for me, because little guys and cruiserweights just exploded, and everybody, you know, basically had an opportunity to, you know, try, you know, and do something in the business.
That's true. That's true. Back in the 80s, of course, that was really, they called it a different era. I would call it the steroid era because there was so many guys that were on the juice back then.
It was the norm. It was the norm.
It really was. They came up to us. Me and my partner were the littlest guys. We were Smurfs, for God's sakes. We were the littlest guys in wrestling. And they would always match us against the biggest guys because that's what the promoters wanted, you know. And they would say, you guys really ought to think about bumping up and using a little juice. And as I would always say, if they can put them in the bottom of my feet and make me taller, I'll do it tonight. But it didn't work out that way. We stayed away from it.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. The independent scene today is a much different scene than the past. You know, there is so many promotions just in the state of Florida. You know, gosh, if you include Georgia, I bet there's 100, 150 promotions everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, what's it going to take to improve independent wrestling, to maybe bring it back to something similar to territories, or just to get all these small promotions to work together?
For me, it's like you got to have regularity. You gotta, not only do you have to have regularity, but every time you run a show, you have to be promoting the next show. You have to let people know what's going on. You have to consistently be there. You know, you can't book a show and then a week before cancel the show because, you know, people that pay for those tickets sets time aside in their life to go to that show. So like you have to be respectful and promote. You know, it's just like that. That's like one of the biggest things. Like, and the thing with the indies is just there's so many of them because, like, you know, you and I said, there's these promoters that they can't get booked, so they'll run a show. And then they'll run a show with a bunch of guys that might not exactly be able to get booked, and then they'll be sprinkled with a couple of guys that are good, and that's where you get all these shows. But like, there are shows, you know, you got the Ring Warriors show down in South Florida. There, you know, you got Believe in Pro Wrestling Extreme in Orlando. There's a few shows that run consistently. They have a fan base. And that's exactly what it takes, you know. Same with like IPW. When I first broke in, I got to work for them, and like they ran, you know, 2 times a month, every single month, and people knew that it was going to be there, and it was going to be bonkers, and it was going to be good talent, and
It's
like
consistent.
Yes, absolutely, and like you can do that. It doesn't matter who you use. You can use all locals as long as you put them in the right spot, and they can look good. You know, you don't have to waste money on big name people. Like I've seen smaller shows do it, have mad houses, and not have any real names in the locker room, but they do it because of good work. You know, and that's what the crowd wants to see. You know.
Well, I think that's a lost art is the promotion, promoting promoters and bookers.
Even booking a card. You know, it's the whole card is a story. You know, you gotta start with a bang and keep it going the whole show and end with a bang. You know, that's what you want. You don't want people to leave the show and be like, you know, what the hell was that? You know, like you want people to be like.
I watched the show just the other day, and I sent this video out to somebody that I've been working with and talked to a lot, and I said, here's a great match. And it was 2 really good wrestlers, and the crowd sitting on their hands, they're dead. You know, and I said, why do you think it happened? These guys are working great. Why do you think that happened?
Because probably nobody before them did a match that told a story. Like the whole show, like if you have one good match on the card and 3 matches before it where there's nothing going on, that you, not to say you have to teach a crowd, but you have to, like, the crowd has to be like, you know, they have to be entertained, you know, and if they're just like, oh, what the hell's going on, and then you do throw somebody out there that has a good match, like by that time they're just like, all right, this is better than what's going on. But you know, like it's the whole.
You want the crowd to buy into every match.
Yeah.
And you want every match to be important.
No one person makes a show.
Oh, absolutely not. You know, that's why I brought you in, because I really respect your wrestling mind, and that's why I'm putting it on here now, because I think you can help a lot of people, not just wrestlers, but for some promoters out there, from some people that think they can book, that might want to learn. You know, I would love to get together with you and some other guys, and let's do a seminar and try to sit down with people.
I've got, that's the thing, like, I definitely could say, like, I have a million ideas, and, like, not all of my ideas are good, not everybody's, all their ideas are good, but that's the good thing about communicating, you know, like, I throw an idea out there, and you say, okay, let's do this with it, or you know, sometimes I'll throw out ideas and I won't even think about it, and somebody else will, you know, be like, you can't do it because of this, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't even think about that, you know.
That's what it takes. If you're going to book a show and you're actually going to bring people in, if you don't actually sit down and think of that show and bounce it off other people you trust.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do it the night of the show. Okay, I've hired 25 guys, the night of the show, you work you.
It ends up looking like that when it goes out. Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Tonight, we're here for Pro Wrestling Rage, and it's going to be the Halloween show, which explains why I'm dressed up tonight. I am Oldberg, you know, Bill Oldberg. I'm just kidding. Although they called me Oldberg out there. Let me go to this. Tonight you got a big show. You're doing a particular character that is caught on, and it is hot as wildfire right now. I mean, everybody's talking about the character. How did you come up with this character?
The undead?
Yes.
You know, I think the undead is just kind of an extension of my Dagon of the Dead character, and probably 5-6 years ago, about 5 years ago, Joey said he contacted me because he was just starting Pro Wrestling Fusion, and he was like, you know, I want you to come in, maybe do something new, you know, what do you think? And I had in my mind, you know, the previous months I wanted to do something different than, you know, just like a plain gimmick, so the first thing out of my mouth was just like zombies. And like Joey being awesome was just like, all right, do it. Bring it to the show and we'll start. And literally over a couple of years, it just built, you know, this was back before the zombie craze that we have going on right now too. So like, you know, it started as an evolution. You know, I started it trying to be basically a zombie as much as I could, but we quickly realized that, you know, I can't wrestle as a zombie. You know, I can only go so far. You can only have so many matches with it. So I evolved it to a guy that dresses up as a zombie, so that opens up my arsenal as far as, you know, I'm a normal person, but this is just, you know, I'm a weirdo dressed up as a zombie. And you know, and then about a year or so ago, NWA had hit me up and they were like, you know, we're really looking for tag teams, and this was right around the time that Jack Manley was moving back to Vegas, and we weren't really doing the loggers anymore, so I just was like, let me do this undead thing. I just spit out an idea. I didn't even really have anything behind it. You know, I was like, I know I can bring Ash Christensen. You know, he's a solid worker, and I trust him. And they were like, all right. So, you know, we went down there and started doing a feud with the, you know, the Red Dogs, and it just blew up, you know, the whole zombie thing with The Walking Dead.
It's still blowing up.
And yeah, like it's just like it's snowballed, and it's cool, you know what I mean? Because I love doing it. It's fun. The crowd likes it.
They do like it.
So, you know.
But I was wondering, because I know you're a comic book guy.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't know if it came from comic books. And you also on Facebook have a movie review. Let's
Oh yeah,
get that up.
Briggs and Howell Films Critique, film critiques on Facebook. Definitely like us on there. Check us out. Every week I go and see movie sneak previews. Sometimes a couple of times a week. Whatever new comes out, we see it. You know, we go on there, and you know, we don't get paid. We buy our own tickets. You know, it's a very like, you know, what's our opinion on what the movies are. You know, and just like there's tons of websites out there, people critiquing movies, but you know, we have that like horror, you know, sci-fi, you know, that's the kind of stuff we like. So, you know, it's just, you know, it's a different flavor for, you know, film critiques. But as far as the comic book stuff goes, man, like when I started wrestling, everything as far as my outfits went, I wanted to base myself after like villains from comic books, like that, like not exactly with a cape, but just like as far as everything else. And like even when I first started wrestling, I painted my face a couple of times. Like it's just kind of funny that it's just like I'm now, it looks exactly like what gimmick I first started wrestling as. And definitely like comic book villains, you know, just tights, and it's wrestling all wrapped up in one, you know.
Well, you know, I like that you're well-rounded. You know you have a family. And I always try to talk to the younger wrestlers and say, and it's important to me to pass this on, that if wrestling is 100% of your life, you're missing out on part of life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, wrestling's important. It was important to me for 30 years, and I loved it. But you know what? It's also important, you know, to have a family,
Oh, no,
to
yeah.
have interests, hobbies, things to do. So the movie thing is a great thing for you to get into. And I've heard that you're doing more with the makeup, with the zombie stuff, that you're actually, tonight you're going to make up
Yeah,
some
I'm
of
filming
the...
a tutorial,
Yeah, that's cool.
There's a
That is
supply and demand, yeah, no, I think it's awesome, yeah. I was like, really? And they're like, yes. I'm like, all right.
Well, that's cool. Well, look, thank you for sitting down
Oh,
with
no.
me.
Thank
And this
you
is
very
just
much.
number one. We're
Yeah.
going to do another one later
Yeah,
on.
yeah, there's plenty
I
more
want
to
to be
talk
with
about.
you.
Yeah, we didn't even get
This
cracked.
is Dagon Briggs. Please look this guy up on YouTube and check out his movie review. And what is that again?
Briggs and Howell Film Critiques.
On Facebook. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you very much.
This is the Wrestling Doctor from Pro Wrestling Extra. Thanks. Great.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.